In this box right here is everything needed to get my all-wheel drive K24 Civic Type R back on the road. Let's go ahead and open this bad boy up. Ooh boy. You know it's gonna be a fun day when you got that brand on your package. So I've mentioned it a few times that we are going away from the Haltech Elite ECU on this build, and we're going to a different ECU. Now here's what we're going to. Of course, we are sticking with a Haltech, because Haltech is the best. We, my friends, are going to be installing a Haltech Nexus R3. Look at this bad boy. So as you guys know, when I built this thing, wiring was a pretty big chore, is a pretty big headache. I started with the Elite 2500. I should have started with the Nexus R3 or an R5 to begin with, and we wouldn't have to be redoing this. But basically right now, we have a giant mess of wires. We have a relay and fuse box up in here, and with the Nexus R3, all of this, everything you're seeing right here, can disappear. The advantage of the Nexus series from Haltech, it's a PDM, a data logger, a wideband controller, and the engine management system all in one. So basically how this is going to work, we're going to run a power and a ground to the R3. We don't need that relay box, we don't need a fuse box, and then straight out of it is our engine harness. This is going to drastically simplify the entire electrical system on this project, clean everything up, but we do have a ton of work ahead of us. We need to completely rebuild an entire harness for this car, and that is where this guy comes into play. You ready for this wiring fiasco? We need to wire all of that. Now, of course, this looks like a big giant headache and a mess, which it is. But here in a few days, this thing's gonna be completely rewired, super clean, super functional, and all around, it's just gonna be a way better setup. So with that being said, let's go ahead and rip out all of the current wiring, all of the current adapters. We have the Elite 2500 mounted up in there. I don't know if I'm gonna mount the Nexus up in there or not, I might. But regardless, remember this look right here. Remember how that looks? That is a mess. So this is everything that I just ripped off the car. This over here was the main engine harness. It started out as a K-tuned harness, and then I went through, modified it, added a bunch of stuff in, deleted a bunch of stuff, and honestly, I wasn't very good at wiring back in the day, so it's kind of just a big mess of stuff. This is the main thing that we are not going to be needing whatsoever. This is a fuse box and a relay box, and then it comes out, goes to a random little, I think it's called the C101 plug-in, which gives you your fan and 12 volt. As you can see, that is a mess. And then you also needed the Haltech adapter for the Elite 2500. So as you can see, there was just so much going on. How the new setup is going to be, this is going to be our engine harness. No adapters, no fuse box, no relay box. Plug right into the Nexus R3 and we're done. But of course, we need to wire this. The first step in getting this done is figuring out where we want this. Alrighty, I have it sorted out where I want to mount the Nexus. It's not going to go in the glove box. It's just going to be mounted right up under here. Of course, the wiring facing the engine bay, so it doesn't have to do a loop. It's going to be sitting something like that. Now here's the thing. I was about to start making like an aluminum bracket to bolt this to, but then I had the slight thought and inclination that there's something like that from the factory, so I had Bobby take a photo of the stock Type R, and sure enough, there's this big black plastic cover that covers everything. So instead of trying to make something myself, I'm just going to go steal that off of that car, see if I can make it work, and if I can, then I'll order a replacement for the red car. Red FK has been acquired. Let's see how this would fit where I'm thinking. That might be perfect. We could even go a little bit farther back, kind of tucks it up and out of the way. I think that's going to be the move. This plastic piece does seem pretty solid. Maybe I'll screw it on because it looks like it's just clipped on from the factory. Yeah, I'll probably bolt it in place and go from there. All right, that's pretty sweet. That is where it's gonna sit, up underneath the dash. Let's get her set up in the car and I'll show you guys how it looks. Okay, that's how it looks without looking underneath. And there she is. There is our Nexus R3, fully mounted up and ready to be wired in. Now, building an entire engine harness from scratch is going to take forever. If we can just get it routed where we want it today, that would be a very, very good start. I want the bay to look as clean as possible. I'm half tempted to run the engine harness through the firewall and through this tub and then come out somewhere in this area here and go underneath the intake manifold, but we'll see what I figure out. All right, let's get this thing all untangled and see what we got going on. So I have the entire harness laid out here. As you can see, there's a lot going on. We have a sub harness that is for the interior of the car, meaning fuel pumps, throttle pedal, stuff like that. Stuff that's in the cabin of the car. And then past this boot, that's all engine related stuff. So what I'm doing right now is I'm building, I guess you could call it a base map, just assigning all of the wires to what I want them to go to, because it's all adjustable. For example, right here, we have a bunch of DPOs, which is a digital pulsed output. Those are going to go to fuel pumps. This right here, we have 2 AVIs, 2 sensor grounds, and 2 5 volts. This I'm going to have for the throttle pedal, being that this car is staying drive-by-wire. You guys get the point. So right now is a crucial part. We need to assign everything in the Nexus NSP software. I'm going to mark it all like I am here, so I know exactly where it's going to run. And then we can set the harness up on the car, trim wires to length, get all the connectors on, and get it loomed. But we got a ways to go before that. Couple hours later, I made some really good progress. Everything is labeled to where it's going to run inside the engine bay. Now, before I go ahead and set this up in the bay and start trimming the wires to the proper length, I'm going to depin a bunch of stuff that we don't need. So the Nexus harness comes with 2 knock sensor shielded wires. We only need 1, only running 1 knock sensor on here. It comes with a CAN wire for the bay. We don't need that. It comes with 8 injector wires. This car is always going to stay 4 injector. So I'm going to pull out those additional injector wires, stuff like that. Just depin it. It's going to clean up the harness, clean up the bay, and then we can move on from there. This is everything in total that we removed. 4 coil packs, 4 injectors, battery ground, and 1 CAN wire that we do not need. Everything else on this entire harness we will be utilizing on this car. Let's go ahead and start mapping out exactly where this harness is going to run. It's of course going to pass through the firewall to the factory boot location back there. I do want to see if I can't find a OEM boot for that so it's nicely sealed up like it should be. But as far as coming into the bay, I'm pretty sure it's actually going to go into the inner fender just so it's not near the exhaust whatsoever. Go through the tub and come out somewhere around here and pop underneath the intake manifold. That's the current plan. Things might change, but let's see what we can figure out. One thing that we do need to sort out and remember is the belt system, the serpentine belt. So this is actually going to be the same kit off of the EM1 that we're going to be running on the Type R. So I'm just going to pull this bracket off. It's only 2 bolts. Get that bolted on to the Type R so I know exactly where the belt and the pulleys are going to sit, because of course we do not want the wiring harness interfering with that belt. Man, this is going to be too clean. Let me give you guys a quick synopsis, a quick update. So we start out at the ECU end of things. ECU is of course mounted right there. That is the extent of the wiring. Now that's not even, I didn't even attempt to clean that up. That's just how it's going to sit. As far as wiring in the cabin goes, one of these is going to run to the throttle pedal. One runs to the fuel pumps. One is going to run to the ignition source. And then we're going to have some additional AVIs, DPOs and whatnot if we want to do fun things later on, like wire in a button for rotational idle, wire in a button for rolling anti-lag, things of that sort. So that's what those additional wires are for. And then the plan is to find an OEM boot to come out the firewall. The accessories that are mounted up here, we have just a flex fuel, we have a boost controller, and we're gonna have wiring for the wideband sensor. We'll have the harness split off, come up through that hole back there and connect to those goodies. The rest of the engine harness, the main part of it, is going to run in the inner fender. You guys see that orange wire back there? And it's going to pass through right in front of this. There's plenty of space. Come through beneath the inner fender. It's going to come out our tub right here. And bam, shoot directly underneath the intake manifold. From there we'll have injectors, our map sensor, knock sensor, everything underneath the intake manifold. And then it's going to come out right here, connect to VSS, cam, coil. You guys get the point. So the bay is not really going to change as far as looks wise, which is obviously the goal. I want it as clean as possible. So we need to go ahead and pull off this fender, pull off the inner fender liner, and very, very carefully drill a hole right here for the wiring harness to pass through. So a little bit change of plans. I'm not going to be going through the tub. I'm actually going to be going in front of the tub underneath the headlight. It'll still all be hidden. This is of course going to be loomed, but the new catch can setup is going to go right here. So it's going to come inner fender, pass behind the headlight, go underneath the intake manifold there. That's going to be the cleanest and most effective way to wire this car, especially keeping it away from the exhaust. If I wanted to come straight out the firewall, unfortunately we run right into this motor mount. Kind of either have to go around the tub like that or on the back side of the firewall, which is awfully close to the exhaust manifold. So this is going to be the best bet. Now we need to go through and start getting all this wiring routed exactly where it needs to be routed, trimmed to length. Unfortunately, I do not have the connectors, so we cannot get it loomed and connected today, but hey, we're getting close. It's probably 5 hours later, and we are making some really good progress. Everything is routed how it's gonna be. Of course, we have some extra slack here. You never want your harness way too tight to where it's pulling on things. So all the extra slack that we don't need can be stored up in the inner fender area. So the main harness runs all the way to here. We have our first split. These two are for the radiator fans. Next split is the alternator, intake air temp sensor, throttle body, map sensor, coolant pressure, boost, knock. And then the rest of the harness runs up. This loom here, coil packs, cam sensors, vehicle speed, coolant temp. That little bunch is for supplying the goodies up there. And this here is for crank sensor, VTC, VTEC, and that is the entire engine. I'm hoping with one more dedicated day of wiring, this thing will be complete. We're still waiting on all of the wiring connectors in the loom to finish up this harness, but the hard part's done. Everything's assigned, everything is ran, everything's routed where it needs to be. It's literally just cut the wires to length, loom it, snap on the connectors, see if it starts. If you guys are doing a full-on custom build, kind of like what we have going on here, I would highly recommend doing the Nexus. In my opinion, this is kind of the rule of thumb, is what I'm learning. If you want to do a plug and play setup like we had on the Evo 8, the Elite series works perfect for that. The Haltech was maybe a 30-minute install on the Evo 8. Everything is quite literally plug and play. But if you're gonna do something custom, in my opinion, it's better to just start from scratch, pick up a Nexus, grab this harness that they offer, and get to wiring. It does look a little bit daunting at first, but it's really not all that bad at the end of the day. And the advantage is you can route everything exactly how it needs to be routed for a build like this, and it's gonna work much better and cleaner in the end. If you guys want to pick up a Nexus R3 or the wiring harness, I will go ahead and link that stuff down below. Big shout out to Haltech for jumping on board with this project. She will be pretty neat all finished up. All right, boys, gonna wrap it up here. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Peace out, and I'll see you guys in the next video.